I wanted to talk a little bit about the political situation in Canada. I haven't talked about it a lot. I don't really have a whole lot to say. Um, but I wanted to briefly just reflect upon a couple of text messages I received. Um, in the run up to the last election, for the record, I'm pretty much a lifelong conservative voter. Uh, but I don't even generally bought memberships, but in the run up to the last election, I decided to spend my $15 and buy a Conservative Party membership. And so, of course, it's now just expired. And but I wanted to read a couple of text messages that I received purportedly from a representative of the Conservative Party of Canada. Same person, two different phone numbers. I don't think it's a real person, but it's like, here it goes. From 613-412-9243. Hi, it's Jackie from the Conservative Party. Your Conservative membership expires today, February 28th. Will you renew now before the midnight deadline? And there's the link. And then, subsequent to that, from 343-296-0379. Hey, it's Jackie from the Conservative Party. Your membership has expired. You can renew here. And they give a link. So, Jackie must be like Siri or Alexa, some automated text messaging system that they use. They use the same thing when they ask for donations. I haven't received a phone call in a long, long, long time. That I think there's actual people who follow up on this. But anyways, there's a reason why I didn't renew my membership. Uh, this last year, of course, has been quite chaotic in the political world generally, especially here in Canada, with the posturing that's been coming from the American administration northwards, and the just the intrigues that are seem to be ongoing. But in specifically regarding my my willingness to financially support a political party, even if I generally agree with the principles, or the majority of the principles I would agree with. But there's a couple of points at which I would disagree with the conservative platform. And actually, they're not even really platform planks; they're just uh, positions on foreign policy that they've taken, and which are not really actually conservative party platform. They're just current news of which they've made statements, and so you can kind of take them or leave them. But recently, the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada has done some interviews, sort of long form interviews, wherein he's asked, all manner of questions, and he's more or less free to respond as he sees it. And so I recently listened to an episode that has just come out by, and I've never listened to this podcast before, on YouTube. It was called Diary of a CEO. And the conversation was fairly wide ranging and covered all kinds of topics. And the interviewer seemed to be repeating himself more than was really necessary. He asked the same basic questions over, and it got a little bit uh, repetitive and pedantic at times, because he was Pierre Poilievre was basically having the same answers to different questions because they were essentially the same question, just worded differently. But anyways, in answering one question that you know that the interviewer posed with regards to it was on economics and they were talking about inflation and they were talking about the free market and how wonderful supposedly that is. And um, Mr. Poilievre, he made an extremely disparaging, seemingly offhand remark about um, shall we say, agricultural workers um, of the past. I'm sure he was referring to, but he was extremely dismissive and derisively remarked that only Luddites and uneducated people would stare at he said the ass of a mule, pushing a plow, looking at the ass of a mule, and it struck me that he could be so um, dismissive of people who either by choice or by force um, live their lives in a more earth-oriented, shall we say, uh, environment, whether that be people who are homesteaders, back to the landers. There are many people in this world who, for various reasons, particularly the Amish and the old order Mennonites, who choose to intentionally choose to forego some of what he would consider to be technological progress and just because something is possible, and they spoke at great length about AI and computers and technology and the this brave new world of this and that. Is technology going to take all of our entry level jobs away and so on and so forth? Um, there seems to be um, a, a tendency to dismiss as inconsequential those who choose to live a life which is more based, more agrarian, and more focused on long-term, both uh, cultural sustainability, environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, and the overarching theme that I was able to detect in his answers to the questions was that it's essentially they referenced Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations. This idea that the free market is this magical, benevolent force in the world that if just left to itself and left to run its course would result in a utopia of undreamt of glory and magnitude, and there are little kernels of truth, in the this idea of voluntary exchange, but um, I don't think the world has ever seen a truly free market. It's always been manipulated uh, by various forces and factors, which I don't need to get into. So, anyways, this disparaging remark about people who use animal power, and which includes, a broad swath of the Amish and old order men and women. I'm assuming he wants their vote. Like I don't know whether they're big voters, but like I'm sitting here at my logging camp by the light of a kerosene lamps here right behind me. There's kerosene lamps on the table, and there's two teams of horses just outside having their evening meal, and I don't have any electricity here. So, am I a Luddite because I don't use AI to do my life, things in my life? Am I not considered a part of the future that Canada, that the Conservative Party imagines for, you know, for the future for our nation? Like, is there no place for traditional crafts, even if they're not the most efficient, they're not high tech, and they don't contribute an enormous amount to GDP or whatever? Like, I really wonder where they seem to be fiscal conservatives. They're definitely not social conservatives. They all support medical assistance in dying. They all support abortion. They all support same-sex marriage. They all support, abortion. All of these things that social conservatives and would have once upon a time, campaigned upon. No, nobody campaigns upon that now. They just don't do it. Even if they personally hold those views, they don't campaign on it. They keep it in the drawer and bring it out when it's convenient, and they keep it back, put it back in the drawer. It's not convenient. So, and I don't claim to know what Pierre Poilievre's, you know, social convictions are in private. All I know is what he said in public, and there seems to be. He's not a conservative, social conservative by any stretch of the imagination. He's against wokeness, but that doesn't mean anything really. It's just catchwords and bullshit for the present moment. So, this idea of unbridled capitalism, an unfettered free market, um, as being the bringer of jollity and utopian bliss, I think is an extremely naive and an extremely worldly and anti-Christian um, philosophy. For all of the good things that the Prime Minister in waiting, as he calls himself, has both written and said, over the years, I think that ultimately, um, I don't see myself renewing my Conservative Party membership. Um, just based upon the things I've heard, things I've seen. Um, so yeah, the insulting remarks about people who would spend their day, you know, behind a working animal, as if it was some sort of retrograde, unproductive, lazy, unenlightened mode of being. So for all the good he's said, I think ultimately he's like Mark Carney liberal with just a little bit more fiscal conservatism. But as far as moral and social conservatism goes, it's dead. There's no such thing in the Conservative Party that I could see. It's all about economics and money, and really they sort of dismiss all else as a side issue. You know? So I'll leave it at that for now, and just just a reflection upon the state of the political discourse in Canada. You have a loony left in the NDP that have literally, it's a clown show. You have a dithering middle, a dithering center, which likes to talk a big talk and talk a big game, but essentially never seems to get anything really truly done. They just get committees and have, you know, red carpet announcements and do a lot of talking, but not a lot of doing. And then you have the the right, who seems to be all about we must support Israel, we must support the bombing of Iran, we must support Ukraine, we must support all this. Like, we need to worry about Canada. We don't need to worry about Israel. We don't need to worry about Iran. We don't need to worry about Ukraine. We need to worry about Canada. And this is the thing. And so, who do you vote for? Like in a world going crazy, where there's crazies on the right, and there's crazies in the center, and there's crazies on the left. When you look at what we call center here in Canada, they 50, 60 years ago, they would have been crazy loony leftists. That's how things have shifted. And now people who are considered to be on the right are just middle of the road, wishy-washy liberals. Ultimately, they may be somewhat of a fiscal conservative, and even that's suspect. And yet, and they have no moral compass or no social conservatism whatsoever. Just not at all. They don't care. It's all about money for them. And I guess that's the political game. It's all about the money. So I don't know where it's all going, but I don't know. Who do you vote for? If Mr. Poilievre doesn't have the time of day for the Amish or the Mennonites, if he's only interested in the high tech, the high finance, and the high IQ, and he wants to bring in the foreign workers, the immigrants who have the PhDs in the home country and the degrees and the credentials to be doctors, lawyers, and such. And, I'm not so sure he's going to want to bring me lowering himself to the level of the cowboys, the loggers, and the farmers, and those who choose a little bit different life back to the land. sustainable regenerative ag. Yeah, so hard to know. Hard to know. There's a lot more I could go into with the whole political philosophy as a Catholic and a traditionalist who, adheres to the social and moral and economic doctrines of the Catholic Church, but they don't sell very well these days. So leave it there for now. Take care.